Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We'll give another 2 minutes for people to join and let's start. Can everybody see the screen? Can you give me a thumbs up? Like somebody can give me a thumbs up? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Let's give another 1 minute for everyone to join. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Welcome again to the webinar. I'm Purvi Sharma from the product marketing team here at Onyx. So legacy data management technologies, roles, and change management process oftentimes yield low business impact, and enterprise struggle with recurring issues like slow time to market, low productivity, hence impacting your bottom line. So let's learn how to mitigate such risk and achieve higher compliance from the technology giant Cisco, and know how Cisco leveraged automated data validation for success. So before jumping onto the webinar, let's look at some housekeeping notes. I would encourage you all to post your questions in the chat box, and you can also submit your questions in the Q&A sections under the activities tab. So now let's jump to the webinar, and before that I would like to invite all the speakers to introduce themselves, and Dr. Phil can take it over from here. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Phil Shelley. Thank you very much for joining. I'll introduce myself first. I've previously been a CIO and a CTO over the years. 11 years ago now, we formed a company called Datamatica. Some of you know, we've developed these intellectual property tools for helping larger enterprises migrate to the cloud from one system to another to modernize data and analytics. That company developed very well, is now part of Onyx. So Onyx is hosting this together with Cisco Systems. So today I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Onyx, and welcome you all. Thank you very much. Virendra, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Virendra Singh. I'm a part of Cisco's Central Data Analytics team, and my team manages all the platform and technology stack for data analytics use cases. So we power all the data analytics workload in Cisco.
Thanks, Virendra. Harish?
Good morning, good evening, everyone, guys. So this is Harish Sabnani. I'm Senior Manager, Data Analytics Platforms, work for Virendra. So my primary focus areas are data integration technologies and BI technologies.
Thank you, Harish. And Purvi, you already introduced yourself, I think. Thank you. So let's go into the introduction of the agenda here. So we're going to cover a few topics. First of all, why data migration to BigQuery? Why are companies doing that? I'm going to cover some slides on this. Cover the drivers, challenges, success factors, why migrations either fail or succeed, and hopefully just a few slides, I'll give you some background on that. And then the Cisco team here will talk about their journey to modernizing to BigQuery, things they did before and after the use of Pelican. This webinar is all about the use of Pelican, which is one of the intellectual property tools that Datamatica developed. It's now part of Onyx. Pelican is a very intelligent data matching tool we're going to talk about more in a minute. And then we're also going to talk about lessons learned from Cisco too, best practices, lessons learned. And then we have a Q&A. We're going to try and leave 10, 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. We have a few questions already that came in, but please put your questions in the chat, because somebody's going to be looking at the chat. And as you go through, just keep putting the questions in. We'll do the questions at the end. It's a little bit easier to manage that way, if that's okay. So a little bit about Cisco now. I think Virendra's going to cover this. Many of you, of course, I think everybody knows Cisco, but I used to be a Cisco customer too for many years. So Virendra, would you like to give us a background on Cisco, please?
Sure, Dr. Phil. So Cisco, most of you know Cisco is known for its networking portfolio. We started as a big networking technology company and expanded into multiple areas like security, collaboration, cloud management, and multiple other domains, right? Recently we have acquired Splunk also. So we're a big portfolio. Coming back to the need for, workload migration to cloud, right? So we have more than one on-prem data platform where we run our analytics workload, right? And as you know, for last several years, cloud-based data platforms and technologies are becoming popular. And because of multiple reasons, right? One of the need for every organization is, hey, we have a lot of data, but how do I drive value from the data, right? And the cloud technologies are rolling out a lot of new capabilities in the data analytics area, AI, ML, recently Gen AI, right? So being in the cloud is one of the important reason for getting increased value of the data, right? And then, historically on-prem systems, right? You have to have multiple technologies and vendors to get your security and governance requirement completed, right? You have to stitch a solution by multiple vendors, right? So, but if you look at cloud, right, they provide all sort of tools and technology to meet your requirements, right? So that was one reason, right? And then, being in the legacy technologies, right? You kind of get limited on the capabilities available and then speed at which they roll out, right? So it's modernization is very important, but it is important to do the modernization without disrupting whole thing, because business has to run, right? Business has to run. At the same time, you have to do the modernization. So you have to reduce the risk. And the most expensive part of any modernization is that the approach you take to modernize your workload, right? And as a part of that, you have to keep your disruption lower, and as well as cost should also not skyrocket, right? So you have to manage disruption and cost both. So these are I would say, some of the important reason for us to looking at the cloud migration.
Thanks, Virendra. So I'll cover a few slides now, a little bit on the market, just so everyone knows. On the data migration side, especially data analytics, data warehousing, modernization, there's still a very powerful trend from on-premise to cloud. And there's some information here from Gartner that came up. If you look at it, it's very interesting. So 95% of new digital initiatives, Gartner say, by 2025, which is not very far away, will be cloud native. So 95% of new stuff is cloud native up to 2025. And I think we're all seeing that. Not many people want to build on-prem new applications or new initiatives. And then the on-premise platforms, 90% of data management tools, platforms fail to support. This is the on-premise ones. Today, they fail to support, this is what Virendra just said, multi-cloud hybrid capabilities or advanced analytics capabilities are not supported very well by these legacy on-prem systems. And so by 2026, 90% of these tools will have to be decommissioned and moved to cloud. So this is another Gartner statement. I think I see this every day. These things are definitely true and happening. There's no question. And why they're happening is just these factors are very interesting. Data is not terabytes anymore. We're very easily getting into petabyte scale in many companies now. It's not difficult to get there because we're keeping data forever. We're not archiving data. We're using detailed data at a granular level for long periods of time, especially as we get into AI and training models. We need more history. Lots of history, because models are pretty difficult to train unless you have lots of history. So we're going to keep our data forever for that kind of thing. It's also all types of data. Of course, we've talked about unstructured data for a long time, but now we have videos, images, AI. The AI era is going to require a lot of mixed media. And we're moving away from batch, the old days of batch, overnight, weekends, that's going. Now we're all real time, daily, micro batch. It's all going much more real time. We know that. As Virendra said, the main thing is that when we migrate is how do you do it with low business impact, preferably no business impact, because it's terrifying. As I've been a CIO going live with big things over a weekend. We don't want to do that anymore. We want low impact, gradual migrations that take less time, less cost, and are highly accurate. We need complete data integrity as we do these modernization journeys. There's a lot of migrations have failed. Now, I personally, fortunately, never had one that's actually failed that we've been associated with, but there's a lot of failures in this data modernization journey in the world. And this is why we created Datamatica Birds and the automation, because manual migrations often fail or cause problems or cause business disruptions. And we're all about taking out the risk of that. So we believe end-to-end automation is paramount because the human brain is incapable of handling some of these complex, interconnected data meshes that we're working with. So automation is super key, super important to take out risk and cost and time. Very detailed assessment of an environment and full lineage of an environment. I mean, column level lineage from source to consumption. We need to know that before we move anything, because you're going to break something if you don't do that. We need an optimized strategy that takes these things into account. Change management is a big thing. Virendra and Harish, you may talk about this in a minute. Change management, we need that to be low impact to the business. We don't have to have massive changes for the business, otherwise they won't accept these things. And have the right partner. We hope that Onyx and Datamatica here are the right partner, because we have a very strong track record of large enterprises moving them to the cloud. We have very powerful, future-proof reference architectures, tools, IP, and automation, and we do fixed cost migrations. So we believe we know how to avoid failures, but there are a lot of failures in the industry. A little bit about Onyx. Onyx is first of all the very first Google partner ever was Onyx, and Onyx has been around for over 30 years. Almost 1,500 customers, very high customer satisfaction rate. And now Onyx acquired Datamatica, so the Datamatica Birds are now part of Onyx. So you may have heard of the Eagle, Raven, and Pelican. I'm going to cover these very briefly, and then we're going to get into more on the Cisco side. From a journey point of view, when we're looking at modernizing, we have to think of these phases. Pre-migration, which is really around assessment and planning. Migration, which is transformation, and then reconciliation. And then post-migration, optimizing and cloud. Cloud definitely needs optimization, cost optimization, and efficiency. We are not talking about Eagle and Raven today, but that's all about a machine learning based tool that will assess an environment, give us lineage at a column level through the entire system. It's super powerful, and we do not do large migrations without running Eagle first. It's too much risk in my view. After that, how do we convert SQL, ETLs, and other queries to a new target? That's all about our Raven technology and service, and the Pelican piece. Now, a lot of people have not realized that their failures in projects were due to bad reconciliation of data. Now, the old ways of testing data were very inefficient, and they were based on sample data many times. We decided more than 10 years ago that that's not going to work in the cloud era. We need cell-level validation, not just once, but preferably every day. In some cases, while we are validating new data pipelines, we need to know every day that those cells are matching between the old system and the new at a very high scale. This is all about Pelican. We're going to talk about Pelican now and the Cisco experience with Pelican. We believe this tool has transformed migrations in terms of taking out risk, cost, and time from the migrations. So let's go over to Cisco again now and talk about the before and after Pelican, and also a little bit about how you did testing, validation, challenges that you had maybe, and then how your users and company are using Pelican to help. If you could do that, that's great, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Phil. So when we started this journey, right, from the very get-go, we were looking for a tool where we can, automate the validation. We had like thousands of jobs running at the same time, and then there are chunks of workload which have interdependencies, right? So we were always looking, okay, if you move it, you are not going to sit and manually validate each and every table for data parity on-prem versus cloud, right? So we evaluated multiple tools, and somehow none of them were working to our scale and our requirements. So we decided that, okay, we'll go and try to build something. We actually built some in-house tool, small scale, catering only to our needs. And parallelly, we were still evaluating, right? And then we bumped into Datamatica. When we evaluated Datamatica, we took the on-prem version again, we installed on Docker. and the journey started. So what was happening before Pelican? We have like thousands of workloads, as I said, right? There are 25 QA testers, you can say, are only sitting, working on the workloads, checking data by data, table by table, column by column. If it works, works. If it doesn't work, then you have to go into the parity of millions of rows, right? That, okay, which record, which table, which column, and because of which transformation it messed up, right? Then we did all this was silo testing. We were, as I said, right, it's very, very specific to workload. Workloads are interdependent, but for a workload, until unless you find the parity mismatch for a specific workload, or dependent workloads are waiting for it, right? So testing was very, very siloed. There was no unison format. And then there were some data movement implications. As you see, right, we were storing data on-prem as well as on the cloud. Then because of data loss, because of the parity mismatch, we were seeing some kind of data loss and corruption. And identifying that data loss was more cumbersome than spending time on the business logic that we were building on the cloud platforms, right? And similarly, because of this data mismatch, we were losing trust on this new platform, because business has been using these on-prem platforms for years there, right? And now all of a sudden you say, okay, cloud migration, very good journey. You are going to save the cost. It's going to scale. But actually, when you are seeing it in cloud and trying to compare it with the on-prem, you don't see same kind of data. So you have a specific number in mind, but it's number on cloud way off, right? And then you again go back, tens of developers sitting on the whole pipeline from step 1 to step 20. At each and every step, you have to go manually check which step the data was missed or not matching to the source or destination, right? So it was a huge effort, and we were really, really struggling before we implemented this thing, right?
So just to add, before Pelican, what Paris was explaining, this was the biggest, I would say, concern and the biggest success factor, the biggest factor between success and failure of the migration. And any of the migration is called success only when business is able to validate that. Business is sign up, right? That, hey, this is, I'm signing off. Before we go to business, we have to be convinced that that data is matching. We don't have problem, right? And before Pelican, other problem was it doesn't need. It was not sufficient that data matched once, unless it's data matches for a period of time. Let's say during the parallel testing, right? It has to match for a week or 2 or 3. Before that, only then we can go to business and say, guys, we are comfortable. We're comfortable now. You can check, you run your checks and all those things. So imagine, right, if you have thousands of data pipelines, manually testing is not possible. And we had so many people, 25 we put it here, but actually there are a lot more people working, right? Other important thing is, right, if you look at traditional way of cell by cell validation is very, very expensive in terms of resources. You have to burn a lot of compute resource to validate cell by cell. We wrote our scripts, right, but it was consuming a lot of resources.
And especially some of our tables are like having 500 columns. Yeah. And with a billion rows, right? So you guys can imagine the complexity that we were dealing with. For $1 billion, one column off, you can't go and sit and validate because you are not adding additional value or additional bandwidth to this, right? It's the same engineer that building on-prem, making your business requirement, still enabling it, right? On the same time, he has to focus on the cloud part of it, right? So as Virendra said, right, we were dealing with a complex challenge, limited bandwidth, and it was becoming very hard for all this siloed and manual testing approach, right? Yeah. Another thing to add is the skill dependent testing, right? The last point that you see. So some of the workload that we are testing on our on-prem platforms, right? Not every developer has that kind of, or not every business user will have that kind of, knowledge that, okay, actually what happened. So there may be some Java tool, some Python tool, some complex, ETL written on a Informatica or Matillion or wherever, right? Everyone is trying to build those transformations. And you don't know actually how to go into the platform level, the warehouse level, and actually see what happened or what went wrong, right? So it was very platform or skill dependent that you have to root cause and everyone needs to know the on-prem platform. That's where we are facing a lot of challenges.
So let's come back to the post Pelican, right? So basically, as Harish said, right, I was personally involved in evaluation of multiple tools, right? We looked at multiple vendors. Honestly, none of those technologies and tools met our requirement, right? Our need, right? That's especially on the scale, the number of objects that we compare, right? So Pelican, I don't know how did we connect it with Onyx and Datamatica, but when we install it, and then basically once it is fully installed and people knew how to use it, right, it has become I would say, part of their life, right?
Exactly.
They cannot operate without Pelican in terms of building, migrating data pipelines and testing, right? So basically, where it helped was you use Pelican tool, right? You select your source and target and tables that you want to compare, right? And you just schedule. It automatically tests, automatically goes and checks the data set, right? And then basically it just tells you, okay, hey, this is a table where data is not matching on this particular step, right? So it's very easy to pinpoint where's the problem. So imagine efficiency has increased drastically, right?
So now each and every engineer, right, say he's working on a specific data pipeline or a step or a leaf of a data pipeline, right? They themselves can go to Pelican, they can select the source, they can select the destination on-prem to cloud. And once the transformation is run in the source and cloud, a report gets generated that, hey, it's matching, it's not matching. Then rather than focusing on the parity, they can just focus on the logic that is translated or is wrong. And then it helps a lot, right? You don't spend time in validation, rather than you can just focus on the migration effort, right?
Yeah.
So automation is the biggest component that Pelican helped us with. Then automatic test coverage, as I said, you go select source, select destination, schedule the job. You can see each and every row, whether it's available in the source, not available in destination, vice versa, a column is matching, primary key not available. Every kind of validation it will show you on a visual scale, as well as they have APIs you can integrate if you have that kind of automation already built in your transformation, right? You can call the API, you can pull the data, you can store the data, and then you can build your dashboards on the data parity for business. Before you go and do actual business validation, you can validate for today's run, is my source and destination matching? If not, what's off? So that you don't go and spend your time on that before engineer goes and fixes that, right? That's the defect detection. Then secure validation. The best part about Pelican, and for a company of size of Cisco, and as well as the data compliance, we are very stringent on security and compliance, right? Best part about it, it does not pull your data out. What it does is, right, it uses the native technology of the platform, be it on-prem, be it cloud. You push your queries, you send the data for validation, it will generate the hash values at both the instances, and what you are bringing out to compare at a central, your local cloud, if it has its on-prem server, wherever you are installing it, it just compares those hash values. So that way you are not actually physically moving the data out or transferring the data anywhere, right? So that helps a lot.
Yeah. So I think other thing I would like to add, guys, all this, apart from this, I think 50% reduction in testing time, I would say, is more conservative numbers. We had a bigger efficiency, right? But other thing I want to add here is, it puts much less load on your source and target systems. I think that's when Harish was talking about hashing mechanism, right? You're not reading you're not in company, you're not doing whole cell by cell. It's like, it's different. It checks all the data, but it uses like minimum resources on your system. So it's very economical, right? The scale we already talked about, right? Thousands of tables. And as I said, it's not just one time. We have scheduled it to run it daily after the jobs runs, right? So you have to demonstrate the data is matching for a period of time before we cut over. So as I said, Pelican made us very efficient, our developers very efficient, and it is one of the important factor for success of cloud migration journey.
I think you mentioned You mentioned change management because you're right. Your business users will not cut over, right? And so until they feel
Absolutely.
yeah.
See, any migration program, right? Any migration program, unless your business signs off, it will not be completed. It will not never happen. And
are you finding that your business users will look at a Pelican report for a few days and say, okay, now I'm comfortable with these new tables?
No, so that's what Virendra said, right? We don't want to give a bad impression or start with a bad impression about a new platform. So we don't let it go to the business till the engineer or a developer or the engineering QA, right? They are happy with the parity. So Pelican is first and foremost being used by the engineers who are actually building these pipelines, right? That's where the automation and scale is helping us as well. So they do the parity. If everything is good, then you just go and tell business, hey, can you try the new platform and see if it matches with your source platform? Because they are generating their business reports. They are not going at a specific row, specific level, specific table, specific column, right? They just want to see my, okay, numbers for this quarter, this platform, is it matching or not matching, right?
So this is primarily used for UAT, right? BAT business will run their own things, right?
They have their own BOs and BI platforms.
So business people does not connect to tables and query and all those. They always check the data at experience layer, right? Which is basically reporting layer or and applications. So just to summarize, right? Pelican was one of the best tool and technology in the market for data validation, and it is one of the important factor for our migration journey.
And actually, you mentioned this, but it's not just secure validation without data movement. Some of the size of your tables, you cannot, if you do try and do file mapping in the old ways, you can't physically move it over the network.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. We try to, some of our tables, if you try to vertically scale, right, and you want to pull the data out, no JVM is sufficient for this size of the data.
No. The whole point of these large data warehouses is you just cannot move the data for validation. So it's just impossible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now there's some lessons learned from this journey for Cisco. Maybe you could share some of those, please.
Yeah. So this migration, right? These are some of the lessons learned from our side, and some of these things you might be aware of that. See, any migration, right? You cannot do like one big bang, right? You start migrating everything. It has to be break down into phases based on dependencies. So if your phases has to be dependent, the most independent part you move first, and then you keep adding on top of that. So multiple phases, right? And as I mentioned in earlier, right? Making sure that you have a solid strategy for your data validation and data integrity, right? You have to make sure that before you go to business, you are really confident that you nail it down. You have the right data set and accurate data set matching between source and target system, right? So that's very important. And the test environment, right? This is one of the most important ones. Your test environment has to be closer to your production, right? Otherwise, what happens, right? The testing that you do in terms of workload, right? You won't get an idea about how will it perform in production, right? So test environment has to be closer to production side of data that you test, data you're trying for testing has to be closer to that. Need not to be exactly same, but it has to be like production. And also, right, when you do the migration, right, you also need to see what kind of testing you have to have your strategic planning, right? What will be covered in unit testing, system integrator, UAT. I would add a BAT also. You have to make sure that you include business team in the final stage of testing, because that's where they get signed off, right? And then basically a whole strategy about how many environments are going to how many environments are going to be used, right? Typically people use dev stage and production, but in our case we used pre-prod also, so that it runs for some time in as like production, but it's still not used as a production. That's when you validate data, right? So and mode of testing, what kind of testing will be done, right? Entry and exit criteria, important one, right? And
That's that's one of the things that comes up, I think more. Now we have a tool like Pelican, we can have a pre-production environment that is pretty much exactly like production, but users are not using it. So you can validate it and it's like real production, but people aren't using it. That's where Pelican really helps you, right? To run that environment.
That's right. There's the pre-prod environment.
That's very important. See, the thing is, right, and we had a big debate whether we should have pre-prod or not. And the logic, initially I was more, okay, why do we need pre-prod anyway? It's a production, nobody using it. But the moment you put your first workload in production, you cannot treat as a pre-prod. You cannot put a new workload which is not being used production, right? Production has to be treated as a production, right? That's why we added pre-prod. Anything which has not been validated by business stays in pre-prod. Once it's validated by business and we're cutting over, right, then only you move it to production environment. So those things you have to think about. It's very important to think about how you're going to manage environment, right? Yeah. And then, test pattern there. See, there are multiple corner case scenario comes, right? So make sure that you cover your test cases, right? And risk management is also when you're doing migration, right? You have to think about security. The tons of developers are working, right? All sort of validation happening. So you have to make sure that right people have access to right set of data, and then you're covering compliance risk, right? If you're non-prod, right? How will you protect your critical data? Make sure that you cover from compliance and the data quality point of view, right? And Pelican can help there in all this data quality loss and corruption side. Other thing we have encountered was many times if you're going across two systems, right? Certain data types does not match exactly, right? So you have to think about how do you represent that, right? So those are important things. And again, right, with execution, obviously, right, you have to be really focused on execution, right? One is like people building ETLs, right, and then people testing it, right? And you also need to decide what kind of testing need to happen at the data level. When I say data level, means the developer level, engineer level, directly going to data set versus at UI level and experience level, right? Because at the end of the day, your business users and users interact with your data at UI level, right? Many times data at a data set is fine, but when representation happens on the UI level, right? We have seen some changes happen, some little bit changes happen. So you have to make sure that your experience layer also testing is happening. And important thing, your stakeholders, right? Your business people are on board, right? You have to make them comfortable. You have to make them confident that hey, the system is it is exactly matching the previous one, and we can basically this new system is ready for usage. So key takeaway, right? Planning, meticulous planning, have strategy to cover your data validation, data quality, under that, right, all the missing data and all those things comes under, and then the compliance people are fine, right? All the audits that you had in the previous system works as it is, right? And then your business testing got over and all those things is that you have to spend a lot of time in the planning before you start working on it. I think I would say those are the key takeaways.
Very good. Yes, thank you very much. Now, we do have some questions. Purvi, are you going to read out the questions and we'll answer them that way?
Sure. So thank you so much, Harish, Virendra, Phil, first and foremost, and thank you so much everyone for showing such an enthusiasm. I see a few of the questions floating. So let me start with the first one. Can you go over how validation is achieved in terms of key indicators it uses, like file type or name, creation date, checksum, or other metadata? So that's like our first question that we have.
Harish, you want it?
Yeah, so no, is it about the product or is it about how we are using? Because for us, it's like out of the box product, right? It's both sides. You can call it as a relational data set sitting in a on-prem warehouse.
Question is, at what level we are testing? File level, checksum level, checksum level. So, I think what the way we're validating, right? We're not validating at a file level or checksum level, right? We are validating when data appears in the target system. When I say target system, means target data platform loaded as a table, right? So we compare when it's loaded into target tables, and we compare with source systems, right? When you move the data from your source system to target system, which is like your cloud system, right? That's where we compare cell by cell, right? We don't compare while it is transitioning, while it is going from on-prem to cloud storage, right? We don't compare.
Yeah, that's what the tool is designed for.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So the other question says, can you explain how you choose between modernization or lift and shift migration?
Yeah, good question. I think that was bigger dilemma we had. See, we had a lot of discussion and brainstorming about it. So lift and shift is the easiest thing to do, right? But it doesn't give you the value of your money or your migration, right? The reason is, right, many times source, basically your on-prem system, the way your on-prem system and cloud system works, right? They're different. They're different. They have different capability. They work different way, right? So if you migrate as it is, right, then you might not be able to take advantage of your cloud platform, right? You might not get performance that you're getting in your on-prem system, right? Other side is when you totally modernize it completely, right? What that mean is you take your code, right, in the on-prem system, and let's say you rewrite everything, right? The challenge in that part is that's where you will be able to take the greatest advantage of your modernization. But challenge in that part is it takes much longer and it costs a lot of money, right? So the program will run much longer and you'll put huge amount of money, and then also your validation. Actually, you'll spend more money in like rebuilding everything, right? So we took a balanced approach, middle approach, where we did a lift, right? And then we found opportunity here. What are the areas we can optimize, right? And then migrate. So we took the middle ground to make sure that at certain level we are able to take the advantage of the cloud platform, but at the same time we are not taking like twice or thrice time and like 2x or 3x amount of money. And once it goes to cloud system with optimization, it will keep optimizing as we touch the board. Keep optimizing.
So you're doing a hybrid, which a lot of customers do, right? They do some of it's lift and shift, some of it's modernized, and then you can always clean up and do FinOps afterwards, after you've moved as well, which you will have to do, right? There's always going to be optimization after you've moved.
Yeah.
Next question, Pruvi. We have a few more minutes.
Sure. So the next question says, please explain how data validation with Pelican provided a low impact when comparing and validating between Google and the legacy production environment.
Yeah, so I think we covered it during webinar as well, right? The best part with Pelican is it uses the native technology. So say you have one on-prem system, it can be anything, right? It can be HANA, Oracle, Teradata, whatever it is. And when you fire the validation sequence or query is going to actually run in your native platform. So whatever is the best optimum way of running that query, it runs there. Similar to the destination. If you fire in destination cloud environment, it's going to do the same thing, right? So it doesn't put too much load where you are trying to write a generic SQL and just, one SQL all platform. That's not how it works. So what it does is, right, it fires there, consolidates the data, brings it to a comparable state, right? Destination, and then you just compare the key values. So that way you are not running, lot of projections, lot of select this. from source and destination and then actually bringing them out and comparing. That would have been a very, very heavy load or system intensive job, right? That's not how Pelican works. So that was very, very beneficial for us.
If I summarize, right, two things, right? When we say low impact, it is in terms of two factors. One is impact on your system resources, there's a low, and there's an impact on the effort, the human effort that we do, right? So on the both sides, it has a lower impact.
Yeah, thank you. We have time for one more, I think, maybe.
Sure. So the other one from the audience is, how did you manage validation for tables where data was changing very frequently?
Yeah, so on that part, right, it's not possible to compare data if it is continuously changing, right? So in our case, right, we have the batch mode, right? We don't do continuous. We have batch processes, right? So we have schedule these comparison, right, twice or thrice a day, right? Whenever process runs, right, whenever ETL runs, we compare after that.
Yeah, the only way I know that people do that is take snapshots and compare the snapshots, because otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or a time bound.
You have to take the snapshot on the both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, see, that will also not work, Dr. Phil, because some data will be in transit. So you have to go some time before.
Yeah, you have to do time bound snapshots. Yeah, it's not easy.
You have to create a time bound snapshot.
Exactly.
Well, I think, Bhuvi, are we out of time, or is there time for more?
I think we can accommodate one more question. There's a question which says, can you share some insights on data validation, data pipeline validation? So there's a sub question also. They say that, did you validate all the tables during the migration, only specific categories of tables?
Not by default. Initially, what we compared is when you get the raw data set right, the source data set or raw data set right, at that level we compared, and then final data product level we compared, right? If your base data is right and your final data products are matching, then you're good, right? But if your base data is matching and final product is not matching, then you go to pipeline and see, hey, which level you have problem, right? Then you compare the corresponding layers.
Yeah, that's the best practice that we recommend, actually, friend. So if the two ends are matching, it's inherent that the middle pieces must be. So you only look at those when you have to find errors. So I think that's very efficient for you, right? I assume it is. All right, well, I think that's it. I mean, anything to add from the Cisco side before we wrap it up? Thank you very much for this. Anything you want to add, final words, or are you good?
Yeah, I think, as we said, right, plan well in advance, spend more time in planning before you start execution. And the other thing is, this is one of the best data validation tool we have found. So we are very, very satisfied, very happy with the product.
We couldn't end on better words than that. Thank you very much. I do appreciate everyone joining, and I think this is going to be made available for people on request anyways, a recorded item. But I appreciate Harish and Virendra for giving their thoughts. They're great people to work with. Our teams work well together. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.